phone rang at exactly 12:37 a.m. The sharp, cold sound pierced the night as if someone had held a blade to my ear. I woke up with a start, sitting up, abruptly in bed, trying to figure out where I was. Outside the window, the dark, desert depths of Nevada shimmered in the faint moonlight, and everything in the room was motionless except for the phone screen. The name on the display flashed in yellow light. Mark. God, not him. Not now. I picked up the phone. Listen, I said, still hoarse from sleep. Mark, it's night. What time is it? What happened? Instead of the usual playful, "Yo, wake up," I heard a quiet, almost emotionless voice. So, are you ready? I felt a chill. We had joked about it during the day. We had discussed it for weeks. I thought he would change his mind. Are you serious? I gulped the air, which suddenly became hot. Do you really want to go today, Dash? Today or never, brother. There's no time to wait. Pause. I'm already near the yard. I pulled back the curtain sharply, and sure enough, his dark pickup truck was parked under the streetlight. Only the light from the lamp seemed dimmer, as if it had been turned down halfway, and Mark was sitting behind the wheel, motionless, as if carved out of the shadows. I don't remember how I got dressed. I was shaking, even though the air was warm. My hands were numb for some reason, and the thought rang in my head, Dash, stop. This is stupid. The Zone 51. They'll shoot you for no reason. But I was already packing my backpack. I agreed with him. I swore I wouldn't give. I wanted this, but it was too late to back out. When I left the house, the desert wind stung my cheeks like sandpaper. The air smelled of dust, metal, and something damp, which shouldn't be in the desert. I got into the pickup truck, the door slamming heavily behind me. How are you? I asked. Mark didn't answer right away. He stared ahead into the darkness of the road. His fingers gripped the steering wheel so tightly that they turned white. Let's go, while we still can. His voice was quiet, scary quiet, not the way he always spoke. We set off. The road was almost empty. Only occasionally did we pass old, abandoned stations, where no one had stopped for a long time. The moon hung over the desert like a watchful guardian. Mark was silent. It made me nervous, because Mark was never silent. I decided to speak. Listen, if anything happens, we can go back. Even now, I'm serious. He didn't answer right away, and without looking up, he said, I don't want to. Mark said uncertainly, as if confessing to something terrible. But I have to. To whom? I grimaced. He looked at me, and there was something in his eyes that I hadn't seen before. Not fear, not anger, but shadow. You, himself, everyone. We wanted to see this, didn't we? And he added quietly, right? I didn't know how to answer. We turned off the highway onto a narrow dirt road that led straight into the darkness. Sand swirled in clouds behind the car. The pickup's headlights illuminated low bushes and rocks that looked like the backs of lying creatures. Mark finally spoke. In 40 minutes, we should reach the point. The old bypass road. They were supposed to pave it 5 years ago, but they simply forgot about it. It's not on the maps. And we're going to take it? Yes, it's our only chance to get close to the outer perimeter without being seen from the patrol roads. How do you know that? He smiled nervously. Forum. People. One guy wrote that he was there, but he disappeared a month later. Maybe they just caught him lying. Or maybe he just disappeared. Mark didn't answer. The pickup stopped at an old concrete slab, half covered with sand. There were no signs on it, but I already felt that this was not just a road. Something sent a chill down my spine. That's it. We're on foot from here, Mark said, and turned off the headlights. Darkness covered us like a blanket, but it wasn't just dark, it was thick dash. Even with our flashlights, it was like we were underwater. We headed deeper into the desert. An hour and a half. Silence and dry sand crunching under our boots. Darkness, broken only by our flashlights. And then I noticed something strange. Mark, do you see that? He pointed his flashlight down. There were footprints in the sand. Not shoes, not animals. As if someone was moving on all fours, but very evenly. Like shadow. Is it a coyote? Whispered. Mark shook his head. No, coyotes don't walk like that, in a straight line. And these tracks they were all the same, perfectly the same. He swallowed hard. And they're fresh. I felt cold. At around 3 o'clock in the morning, we saw the first glimmer of light from the searchlights pulsated over the distant hills. That was where the first perimeter of Area 51, the outer perimeter, the one that all tourists see from the road. We're close, Mark whispered. 20 more minutes. We crawled up to a hill, the top of which was about 100 meters away. The higher we climbed, the louder the faint hum became, like an electrostatic field or something worse. When we finally looked over the edge, I felt my heart stop. In front of us stretched a black fence taller than a house. Thin blue flashes emanated from it, like micro-discharges. And behind it, something was moving, slowly, huge. But in the darkness, we could only see silhouettes. Oh my God, Mark. He put his finger to his lips. Hush, don't make a sound. The patrols are awake. And he was right. A few seconds later, I heard the sound of engines. 2 cars were driving parallel to the fence, illuminating everything around them. The searchlights moved as we lay down. It was hard to breathe. If they raise the spotlight higher, I whispered, they won't if we don't move. But I didn't. Believe it. A rock rolled down the slope. I don't know if I kicked it or Mark did or if it was just an accident, but the sound was loud enough. The spotlight suddenly jerked in our direction. Down, Mark hissed. We fell face down in the sand. The light slid down the slope, rising higher, higher. I wasn't breathing. Mark, I could feel the ground trembling beneath my fingers. 1 second, and they would see us. The spotlight hung for a second, then slowly shifted to the side. We didn't move for another 5 minutes. The sand cut my cheeks. My hands were numb. Finally, Mark whispered, we have to move. Let's roll down the opposite side. Otherwise, they'll definitely spot us. We rolled down the sand, slowly but painfully. My shoulder hit the rocks and the flashlight almost slipped out of my hands. But we managed to stop in the hollow. The patrol was moving away. I exhaled with a whistle. Did you see that? Mark, did you see that? He grabbed me by the shoulder. Quiet. We almost made it. Now the most important thing is to find the old drainage channel. And we're inside. Are you out of your mind? We almost got caught in the spotlight. He looked at me with his dark eyes. Don't start. We're here. There's no turning back. I wanted to argue, to say that this was crazy, to say that I wanted to go home, but the words stuck in my throat, because behind the fence, far away in the darkness. Something collapsed again. Something huge. Wrong. Not human. And I realized that I had no idea what we had gotten ourselves into. "Let's go," Mark said. "Hurry up, before the patrol returns." And we set off into the darkness of the desert in search of that channel, not realizing that we had crossed more than just a border. We had crossed the point of no return. The sand crunched under our feet again as we climbed out of the hollow. In the distance, the patrol's searchlights slowly swept across the desert surface. But they were already moving away. This gave us a chance to move faster. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, not from running, but from the realization that we were now in the most dangerous place in the United States. But instead of fear, Mark looked as if something was pulling him forward. "We need to stay low," he whispered. "It's another 300 meters to that canal. It exists. If it exists, we would have already seen it on the radar, on the maps, on official maps?" Mark snorted quietly, almost angrily. "They don't hide. Things like that." I couldn't argue with that. We moved between the dark hills, always staying in the shadows. The wind fell, silent. Even the grains of sand lay as if glued to the ground. Everything around us froze, and that was wrong. Very wrong. At one point, I thought I heard a whistle. Distant gusts of wind? The crackling of electric fence wires? No, it sounded like someone whispering from a great distance. Whispering, low, indistinctly, but persistently. "Do you hear that?" I asked quietly. "What exactly?" Mark looked around nervously. "Like voices? Or a radio? Maybe a patrol?" "No, the patrol was on the western edge. Here He suddenly fell. Silent. I shuddered. "Why did you stop?" Mark pointed the flashlight down. The light fell on the sand, and there were those same footprints, the same ones we had seen before, even identical, as if left by creatures that walked not on feet but on tentacles, or fingers, or something else. Mark carefully touched the imprint. "Warm," he whispered. "Warm." I recoiled. "Mark, what animal in the desert leaves warm footprints? These footprints look like they were made a minute ago." He was silent. His gaze was absent, as if he wasn't thinking about the footprints, but about something much worse. We kept walking. The temperature was dropping. Even the desert night isn't this cold. I felt like the ground was pulling cold blankets over me. And then I saw movement. Something was moving between 3 bushes 20 meters away from us. A dark silhouette, low, too fast, as if someone was running sideways, but without tilting their head or torso. "Mark, I see. What is it?" "Maybe it's a coyote." "Stop freaking out, bro," he said, but you could tell by his voice that he didn't believe it. Everything seems bigger in the dark. I didn't argue. I was afraid my voice would break into a scream. The bushes rustled again. "It's a coyote, it's a coyote, it's a coyote," I whispered to myself. And then Mark said, "Coyotes don't move silently." He said it in a quiet, very quiet voice. The kind of voice people use when they don't want something to hear them. We moved closer to the perimeter. The closer we got, the more something tingled under my skin. My body seemed unwilling to move forward. The sand beneath my feet felt different. Cold, rocky, wet. "It smells like water," I said. "It's a sewer outlet, an old one. There should be a drain pipe here from the 70s. If it hasn't collapsed, we're in." The light from the searchlights was now closer and brighter. Several times we lay down in the sand when patrol cars drove by. The engines roared, the searchlights cut through the night shadows. Once, a car passed just 15 meters away from us. I heard the patrolman's radio. Report 321. Movement in Sector C-17. Unconfirmed. Mark glanced at me. They spotted us after all. He whispered, "No, could have been anything. Coyote, a bird, a sand ripple." The words sounded hollow. I didn't believe it myself. We finally reached the old concrete gutter. The walls were cracked, but in large chunks. Rust, sand, dried algae, everything mixed together to create a picture that suggested there hadn't been any water here for a long time. But the tracks led right there. The flashlight illuminated a dark hole in the concrete. Black, deep, like a pupil. "It's him," Mark exhaled. "How can you be so sure?" He pulled out his phone. The screen displayed some encrypted coordinates. Old forum posts and map fragments. It all looked very unprofessional, amateurish, but at the same time horribly realistic. "Here, look." He showed me the point. Tunnel Black 3, the very one they wrote about. The one where 3 diggers disappeared in 1999. The one that... He paused. "What? Go on." "The one everyone on the forums said they could hear." I felt my heart sink. "Are you saying he's alive?" Mark shook his head. "No, I mean that people heard something from him." Suddenly, cold air burst out of the opening. So cold that I could feel it even through my jacket. The air smelled like wet earth and iron and something spoiled. And then I felt it for the first time. Someone is watching us in this tunnel dash. I didn't see any. I didn't hear any movements. I didn't feel any breath, but the feeling was there. Mark turned on the GPS on his phone. Suddenly, the screen began to flicker. Brighter, dimmer. Stripes ran across it. "What's going on?" He pressed the buttons. "There shouldn't be any interference." Here, the screen flashed white. It became so bright that I instinctively closed my eyes. "Turn it off," I shouted. "It's doing it by itself." Mark didn't have time to finish. The screen went dark, completely, as if it had been turned off from the inside. We stood in front of a dark opening, from which came a cold, rotten air and something unsettling. All around us was dead. Silence. The sky was starless. The patrol was somewhere behind us. Traces of strange creatures underfoot. "Mark," I whispered, "what's wrong with your phone?" He stared at the black screen, as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. "It won't turn on," he said quietly, hesitantly. "Let me." I reached out. "Don't touch it." Mark stopped me with a sharp movement of his hand. His voice had changed. "Did you hear that?" he asked. I froze. "What?" "From the tunnel, just now. Didn't you hear it?" I didn't know what was scarier, that he really heard something, or that I didn't. We stood by the concrete railing, trying to decide whether to continue or turn around and go home. The night had become heavy and silent. Every sound echoed too, loudly in our ears, as if the world around us had fallen silent, listening to our footsteps. Maybe, screw it? Mark tilted his head and took a deep breath. "Let's go. Back." "Huh? It all looks... well, you know." He swallowed nervously. "I don't like it either." I turned around, assessing the darkness of the desert. "But we're almost at the entrance. Let's at least take a look." I didn't have time to finish. Behind us, far away but approaching too quickly, came the roar of an engine. engine that didn't sound like a civilian vehicle, smoother, aggressively, like a predator that had tracked us down. I looked back and almost slipped on the sand. Patrol. And it wasn't just any car, it was an armored SUV with a spotlight platform, mounted on top, and the spotlight was already trained on us. "Let's run," I shouted, although it was obvious even without words. Mark was the first to jump up. I followed him. My feet were stuck in the sand. Every step was difficult, and the searchlight beam slid across the ground, getting closer and closer to us. "Stop! Stay where you are," came the voice from the speaker. Then the first shot rang out. Dry, short. The bullet hit the sand to my left. "They're shooting!" Mark shouted without looking back. "Obviously. Run faster." Damn it. The second shot knocked a rock out from under Mark's feet. He almost fell. Pushed him aside, and we both rushed down into the ravine that led straight to the black mouth of the tunnel, the same one Mark had seen in the photo on his phone. There was no third shot. Instead, there was a sharp sound of brakes. The patrol was approaching. We rolled down the slope. The sand scratched our hands and knees, got into our mouths and under our clothes. I almost knocked Mark off his feet, but we managed to jump into the darkness of the first few meters of the tunnel. Inside, it was damp and cold like a refrigerator. The air was heavy, as if frozen. "This way, run deeper," I shouted, and Mark obediently ran deeper into the corridor. And just a few seconds later, we heard a voice from outside. It was unclear, but it came through as a rumble in the patrol's loudspeaker. "Forget them. I'm not risking my life for two idiots." The door slammed. The car turned around. The tires crunched on the sand, and the sound began to fade away. Silence rolled in quickly, too quickly. Mark tried to say something, but only a hoarse whisper came out. They didn't follow us. That's good. This is our chance. We need to figure out where we are." We stood in the darkness, which seemed to press down on us. The light from my pocket flashlight cut through the darkness briefly, but was quickly swallowed up by the thick air. The tunnel went down, deeper, much deeper. "What kind of place is this?" Mark whispered. His voice was barely holding on. It was already breaking into a squeak. "I want to know too." I licked my dry lips. "Let's go slowly. We need to find a fork in the road, a door, something dashed up." We walked for 5 minutes, then 10. Our footsteps echoed hollowly off the concrete walls, and something was wrong, almost imperceptibly, but the air had become warmer, not so dead, and it seemed to breathe. I saw drops of condensation on the walls, but they were moving. They were flowing down. You know how? Not down. "Can you see that?" I whispered to Mark. "No, I'm not looking," he whispered. "I don't want to look." I brought the lamp closer. The drops, like living creatures, rose to the ceiling and disappeared into the darkness, as if drawn into some tiny hole. Mark shuddered, and I noticed him clench his fists. "Listen, Mark." Maybe. I turned around, and we both heard a ringing sound, metallic, sharp. If you had to compare it, it was like a huge piece of rusty rebar sliding across the concrete for several meters. "What is it?" Mark fell to his knees, covering his head with his hands. "Get up." I grabbed him by the shoulders. "Get up, please." And then the light flickered, barely, once, and I saw something behind me. The stories about little green men suddenly seemed like children's fairy tales. 12 meters away from us, in the darkness, stood a figure, tall, thin, but not human. And worst of all, it tilted its head as if it was looking directly at us. I pressed the flashlight button. The beam flickered and went out. Mark made a sound like a short, stifled cry. "Let's run." I didn't wait for his consent. I grabbed his hand and pulled him further down. The tunnel. Something crashed behind us. It didn't fall. It collapsed, as if a soft body had hit the concrete floor with force, and then crawled, so fast that the sound of movement was quickly approaching. We rushed down. My breath burned in my chest. "Don't look back," I shouted, not even recognizing my own voice. "I can't," Mark whispered, but I could hear him crying as we ran. Then we ran into a huge underground hall. The lights were on here, dim, flickering, but enough to see the scale of the place. Metal beams, cables, old ventilation shafts, and a surveillance camera that slowly turned toward us. "Did you see that?" Mark whispered, trembling. "Yes. So, that means there are people here? I don't know." Something rustled in the tunnel behind us. I looked back and immediately regretted it. The figure was not far away. Stood at the entrance to the hall, tall like a hospital x-ray stand, bony but unnaturally flexible. His neck was bent, and its eyes, there were no eyes, only long black hollows in which something flickered. This is a joke. This can't be. Mark froze, and then it squeaked. Not like an animal, not like a human, like an old radio picking up a signal through heavy interference. We have to go. I grabbed Mark. Now. He didn't move. He just stood there, staring at the creature and saying nothing. "Mark!" I shook him. "Let's go." The shadow lunged forward. Then Mark finally woke up, and we both rushed into the nearest corridor. We ran without knowing where we were going, just away. The corridors twisted like the insides of a giant. The lights flickered, metal creaked, and the creature, it wasn't far behind. I could hear its movements, strange, mixed with the sound of the radio, with interference, with clicks, as if it were passing through other frequencies of the world. Mark was gasping for breath. He began to back away. He fell, but got up again. And finally, we saw the exit to the ventilation tunnel, low but wide. We squeezed into it and crawled. Every movement cut our palms. The air was hot and smelly. She. Mark mixed up his words. "I know. Crawl. Crawl, Mark." Something hit the metal wall behind him. Once, twice. The third time, it hit so hard that the ventilation tunnel shook, and then silence. We crawled for another 20 minutes until we finally fell out onto the maintenance platform. The lights were flickering. The air here was fresh. Mark was lying on the floor, trembling, so badly that he didn't even try to speak. And his eyes, they didn't seem to blink. I realized he would never be able to speak normally again. Not after what he had seen. Not after what stood with us in the darkness. Everything's fine. I tried to say, even though I was lying to myself. We're alive. We escaped. Far away in the corridors below, something howled, loudly, angrily, hungrily. Mark covered his ears, but didn't make a sound. He just shook. "We have to get out," I whispered, immediately, and that was only the beginning of what awaited us, because the real hell had only just begun. I don't know how long we wandered through the underground labyrinth. An hour? 2? Day? There were no windows, no clocks, no signs that time even existed. Only an endless concrete intestine, living its own life and breathing like a huge black lung. And we are small shadows inside it. Superfluous, strangers, and very, very visible to the thing that was hunting. Mark walked behind. He could already make some sounds, but it was difficult to call them normal. Words. Exit. He wheezed, clutching his back. Gigota exit. We'll find it, I promised, even though I didn't believe it. We had to get out simply because there was no alternative. We walked through long, winding corridors, and with every 10 meters I began to notice what I had previously tried to ignore. Bones. At first, there were individual ribs, vertebrae, and pieces of skulls. Then, entire skeletons pushed against the walls as if something big and strong had dragged them there. Mark stopped at one of them. He touched a dusty vertebra with his fingers. Des diggers. He whispered. Why, you heard. They disappeared here. I swallowed hard. Yes, rumors about diggers who went into Area 51 and never returned were as old as the internet. And now they lay before us. I crouched down. Some of the bones had teeth marks. Huge ones. Irregular. As if it wasn't human, not animal, something completely different. We have to keep going, I whispered. Dull roar echoed from deep within the tunnel. Distant, but enough to make my heart sink. Shoo shoo shoo. Mark froze. It sif sif kaka. I know. I grabbed his elbow and pulled him along. The roar repeated, and this time it was closer. After a few minutes of walking, we came to a fork in the road and almost walked past a rusty double metal door with a sign that read, Sector D, Detention Hall. Is this a prison? I lowered my voice to almost a whisper. Mark nodded. His eyes were large, like those of a hunted horse. Maybe there's a way out, he said. I pushed the door, gave way easily, and we entered a place where even the concrete seemed dead. The corridor was wider than the previous ones. On both sides were cells, all torn apart. Some of the bars were bent, as if they had been gnawed through. Others had simply flown off their hinges. Above each cell, red electronic signs glowed. Experiment 1, Experiment 2, Experiment 3, Experiment 27. Mark spoke first. His voice trembled. They all broke out. I stood there, staring at the twisted door of cell number 17. The walls inside were scratched, as if by long claws. The floor was covered in brown stains that I didn't even want to identify. I think your ears weren't ears. I nodded toward the sign. We were trapped. Mark didn't finish. I heard something else. Knock. Okay. Knock. Knock, knock, knock. It sounded like something was running across the metal ceiling. Fast. Lightly. I slowly raised my head and saw it. This creature was the size of a human, but moved like a spider. Long, thin legs clung to the metal above. The body was dark, narrow, unnatural, like an insect magnified 10 times. The head was the worst. It was human, or it used to be. The eyes bulged. The skin was stretched. The jaw hung as if torn apart. Creaked, opening its jaws to an incredible width. Mark groaned, not from pain, from pure, concentrated horror. Let's run, I whispered. It moved down the wall. Fast. Incredibly fast. Mark ran first. Followed him. The creature let out a piercing metallic squeal that brought me to my knees. But I got up and ran again. "It's close," Mark shouted. I could hear her paws pounding on the floor. The metal creaked under her blows. We rushed down the corridor leading to the massive doors of the technical block. The doors were old but looked sturdy. It was only a few meters away. "Mark, hurry up." I grabbed his arm. Mark ran into the doorway first. I was about to slam the door shut, but the creature suddenly jumped. I felt a stream of air burn my neck. The wall creaked. "Oh, no." Mark screamed, turned around. The creature had latched onto his back. 8 legs clamped down on him like a vice. His body convulsed. Blood splattered in my face. "No." I hit the creature on the head with my flashlight. Then again. A guy. N. A guy. N. It screeched so loudly that my eardrums nearly burst, and it bounced back at Mita. Mark was falling. He just fell like a doll with its strings pulled out. I closed the door right in front of the creature and propped it open with a piece of furniture. I grabbed Mark by the arm and pulled him inside. The creature slammed into the door with such force that I fell backwards onto the floor. It began to rage, scratch, roar, howling as if it were being torn apart alive. "H here, and not alone," Mark gasped. "I hear E here." I held my breath, and then squeak, then another, and another, dozens of them. Something was moving behind the door. Lots of somethings, dozens of paws, dozens of throats, dozens of eyes. Mark, to hear, there are not one, not two. I know. A chorus of inhuman sounds erupted behind the door, and we stood in a small room in the technical block in the dark, without weapons, without food, bitten, maimed, half-mad. And for the first time ever, I felt the true meaning of a word I had never dared to think before. We are doomed. Okay. Below is the complete, large, and atmospheric 5th part in the style of the previous ones, with dialogues, a frantic pace, horror, hopelessness, and an emotional finale. I am writing it extensively so that it sounds natural as the conclusion of a long story. You can ask me to expand it further if you want, to bring all parts up to 20,000 words in total. The door was already shaking. The metal trembled and creaked, and dust fell from above. Each blow from that creature echoed inside me, as if a hammer were striking my ribs. Mark was breathing heavily beside me, gulping air in ragged vetbrech. I could hear hissing and bubbling in his wound, something you only hear when air enters a wound along with blood. "It's about to break through," I whispered, not even realizing whether I was speaking aloud or thinking. Mark almost fell when another deafening boom rolled off the wall. "I don't want to," he croaked. "I don't want to die." My hands were shaking. I stared at that door, at that pathetic strip of metal that separated us from what had long since marked us as prey. And then, tra-ta-ta-ta-ta, gunshots, a whole barrage of them. They were firing somewhere outside so that the walls shook and the air vibrated with the echo. What the? I didn't even have time to finish. The door was violently knocked out. Pieces of metal flew into the corridor. People in black helmets with flashlights on their weapons burst out of the cloud of dust. They all shouted together, drowning out the gunshots. "Lie down! Don't move! Clear the area! 2 targets! 2 targets!" The light from the flashlights cut sharply into my eyes. I instinctively raised my hands. "I'm human. Don't shoot. My friend. He's wounded." One of them ran up to me and knocked me down with a knee to my chest. I heard Handcuffs click. Get out, quick! One of them barked, pointing his rifle right at my face. You're coming with me. I was pulled forward abruptly. I looked back. Mark was lying on the floor in a pool of dark blood. Get up! One of the patrolmen yelled at Mark. Why are you lying there? You idiot? Get up! Mark barely opened his mouth. I can't. The patrolman swore as if he had been personally insulted. We don't have time. Leave him. We can't help him anymore. Let's get out of here before these devils call for backup. Stop. What? I felt a chill run through me from head to toe. How can we leave him? He's alive. He's breathing. He can walk. I'll help him. I lunged backward, but they yanked my handcuffs so hard that I fell to my knees. Stop! I shouted. Help him. He's alive. He's my friend. No one heard me, or they pretended not to hear. Mark looked up at me, barely, through the pain, through the fear, through what was already beginning to pull his gaze into darkness. He raised his hand, a small movement, a silent goodbye. No, Mark! I yelled so loud that my throat hurt. His hand dropped. The creatures behind the door began to tear something apart and scream. Shots rang out behind us again. Someone shouted, "Contact on the right." Someone else cursed and fired shot after shot. They dragged me forward down the dark corridor. I could barely stand on my feet. Tears streamed down my face. I didn't understand where I was going. I couldn't see the road. Everything merged into a single stream of fear. Move! One of the patrolmen yelled. We're already walking on a knife's edge. Something roared behind me, so loud that the concrete shook. It's it, I whispered. Is it after Mark? Silence in response. And then suddenly, a scream. Mark's scream. It echoed through all the tunnels. Wild, piercing, inhuman. No. I started to pull back, but they pulled me away. No. Mark! Keep moving. They yelled at me and hit me on the back with a rifle, but so I wouldn't stop. I cried. I don't remember the last time I cried like that. My friend's cry echoed underground until it faded away. Suddenly, as if cut off with a knife, we finally got out of the tunnel. I was in shock, in a daze, my legs buckling. Someone grabbed me by the shoulders and pulled me along. I was pushed inside so sharply that I hit my shoulder against the metal wall. The car door slammed, and the sound echoed in my head as if I had been locked in. Coffin. My breathing became short and jerky. I tried to regulate my breathing, but my lungs seemed to have shrunk in size. Everything around me slowly blurred, as if I were looking through water. Sweat ran down my face, but I was cold, incredibly cold. Through the small window in the door, I could only see the flickering of lights, and the black and green glow of instruments illuminating the concrete walls of the tunnel. A little more of this flickering and I would have felt nauseous. Someone ahead shouted, "We're moving. Exit the danger zone." The engine roared to life. The car jerked and lurched forward. I almost fell to the floor, but managed to brace myself against the cold metal. All the way, I heard only one thing, my own breathing, which sounded like trembling wheezes. Then someone nearby spoke, their voice hoarse with adrenaline. "You have no idea, kid, how lucky you are." I didn't answer, didn't even look up. He continued, "The second in 3 years, the second, damn it, and that was by accident. If it weren't for the one shouting on the radio, we wouldn't even have turned into that sector." My hands trembled in the handcuffs. My breathing became erratic again. I whispered. He was alive. The patrolman exhaled heavily, as if he was tired of my questions, which I hadn't even asked. You didn't see what happened to him. After bites like that, no one... He stopped mid-sentence. In short, your friend wouldn't have made it. I raised my head. For the first time since they dragged me into the car. You left him. He could have walked. I could have supported him. You just... My voice broke. My words stuck together. I started to choke. The patrolman turned to me and said quietly, but with steel in his voice, "There was nothing you could do. Remember that. In these tunnels, people don't decide who survives. They decide." "They?" I whispered barely audibly. "Who are they?" He immediately turned away. "Forget it." The car jumped sharply, as if it had hit a piece of concrete. I hit my head against the wall, and for a second the world plunged into darkness. My ears rang. Boom, boom. Boom, boom. My heart was beating so hard it felt like it was trying to burst out of my chest. When I came to my senses, we had already left the tunnel section. Concrete corridors were replaced by steel gates. Lanterns, towers, armed men. Everything was bathed in the greenish glow of night searchlights, as if in a dream. The car slowed down. "Take him out," I said. "Take him out." The door opened, and I was roughly pulled out. My legs buckled, but they didn't let me fall. They held me by the neck as if I were a sack of potatoes. I saw the asphalt wet with dew, concrete walls, the shadows of people standing by other cars, and in every shadow, in every glint of light, it seemed to me that it was Mark, that it was him standing there, looking at me, that he would come up to me and say, "Well, bro, another adventure?" But it wasn't him, and it never will be. The next few hours were a blur. They took me somewhere. They put me somewhere. They took me somewhere. I spoke, they didn't hear me. I screamed, but they told me to calm down. I cried, but they turned away. They washed me in some kind of bunker. They checked me. They scanned me. They asked me questions I couldn't answer. What animal attacked you? What did it look like? How many were there? Was there contact with mucus? Did you hear any sounds behind you? What frequencies? And I just kept repeating, "Mark, he's still there. He's wounded. He's alone." And everyone was silent. Everyone. Finally, after a long time, they put me in another car. It was smaller than the one they had taken me out of, but just as metal and stuffy. The doors closed, and it became dark inside. The trip was long, incredibly long. It felt like hours had passed, maybe even more. I leaned my head against the cold metal and closed my eyes. And then I heard it, somewhere deep in my head, somewhere between my nerves, quietly, "Help!" Voice, Mark, the same voice he used in the tunnel. If he were standing behind me. "Help me, I'm here. No," I whispered. "No, you're not here. I want to live." Now the voice was louder. "You left. You abandoned me." I opened my eyes and hit my back against the seat. "Freeze!" The driver yelled because I jerked forward. "Don't make any sudden movements." I looked at the wall in front of me, and I saw a shadow. Impossible, but I saw it. A shadow sitting next to me, thin, with bent arms, with a hollow where the mouth should have been. I covered my eyes with my hands and began to breathe quickly. No. The shadow didn't disappear. Then there was the trial. I sat in handcuffs on the bench while some people in uniform read the charges, which I could hardly hear. Illegal entry, threat to national security, obstruction of justice. But inside me, Only one thing echoed. You left me. You were supposed to get me out. They gave me 2 years. Everyone said, you're still lucky. Everyone said, you should have used your head. No one said anything about Mark, not a word. It was as if he had never existed. The first nights in the cell were terrible, but then it got even worse. Because at night, when the whole block fell asleep, I heard something scratching behind the wall, quietly at first, then louder. Then I began to hear breathing, hoarse, uneven, labyrinthine, and a voice, always the same. Friend, open up. I'm in pain. It's dark. Cover my ears. I scream. I bang my head against the pillow, and he laughs, hoarsely, inhumanly. Mark's laughter, which I have never heard in my life. Laughter that does not belong to a human being. Tonight he said something new. I have found a way out. I will come soon, and I know. I can feel it with my whole body. Soon I will finally see my friend again.